Good morning and welcome. I'm Brian LaPasse, Chief of Program Services for OPSC. With me today, I have Tracy Sharp and Joshua Potter, who are the Operations Managers in Program Services. We'll be facilitating today's meeting and helping out with questions and answers after the presentation. We have just one topic today. That's the continuation of the small school district program. We've gotten pretty far in the creation and implementation of this new program. But since the last meeting we had back in December, on the 10th of December, we spotted some opportunities for improvement and just to add some clarification on certain areas. When we were reviewing the proposed regulation package, we thought we would bring forward a few more changes just to improve them just a little bit more. So today we're going to be going through those updates, the updates we made, and then just some clarifying proposals we wanted to share with all of you. It's relatively brief, but as we've done all throughout the implementation of Prop 2, we're trying to make sure we're being very transparent with anything that we're going to be recommending. We wanted to get your feedback on anything that we're recommending, and so that's really what we're doing here today, is just to go over the things that we noticed and see what you think of them, just so that there's not any sort of surprise or anything unfamiliar when we take it forward to the state allocation board for approval, which I think will be the next step for these. So like I've said before, this is going to be a really great program. We think it'll be very popular, and we plan on doing a lot of outreach and a lot of just going out and talking about the program this year in advance of when the funding rounds are going to open. So you'll be hearing a lot more about this program from us. But today we're just going to be going over some of the minor changes that we made over the last couple of months to hopefully improve what our proposal is going to be to the state allocation board. So with that, I will turn it over to Casey Barr, who's going to be presenting today's item. And we're looking forward to any comments you might have today.
All
Casey.
right. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. So as Brian mentioned, my name is Casey Barr. I am the supervisor over the new small school district program team. And today I'll be continuing the discussion of implementation plans for the new small school district program. Just for brevity's sake, I'm just going to go ahead and refer to this as program throughout the presentation today. As Brian touched on, the item we have for you today aims to really just expand on elements of this program that we found needed additional clarity, particularly as this program really aims to be as clear and comprehensive as possible to school districts aiming to participate in the program. So I'll quickly note that throughout this journey of developing it, we've had some really excellent stakeholder feedback that has really just supported so much of the development of the program. And I can't reiterate thanks enough to everyone for the continuous engagement and scenarios that you pose to us, just to make sure the program is developed as comprehensively as it can be. So moving toward the presentation aspect, I'll just be pausing a few times here and there just to check in and see if anyone has any thoughts or questions. But that being said, the agenda for today is to review some new and amended proposed regulations that expand on those previously presented, and also to review a few updates to align with those regulations on the proposed application for small school district program preliminary apportionment, which is a mouthful, so I'll say Form SAB 5012. And also included in this item today are some proposed updates to the fund release authorization Form SAB 5005, as well as the Proposition 2 grant agreement. So just another quick note before we get started. From our last presentation back on December 10th last year, we did not receive any stakeholder feedback. So I just wanted to note that ahead of the presentation. And so before we get started looking at the proposed regulatory changes, I wanted to take a moment to kind of clarify occupancy requirements particular to this program. So if we could move to stamped page 5 of the item, Brian, that way everyone can have a visual reference as well. We had a stakeholder recently who posed a scenario to us, which led us to wanting to clarify the occupancy component for new construction applicants within the stakeholder item. So the scenario is that a small school district has a new construction Form SAB 5004 application currently on the workload list, and they're thinking about submitting a 5012 for the program for the same project with the same scope. So this Form SAB 5004 application on the workload list was submitted prior to occupancy, which is, pursuant to existing regulatory requirements for new construction applications. However, since those classrooms are now occupied, the stakeholder was curious as to whether or not the district could participate in the new program and receive new construction funding for this particular project, noting that the submittal of the Form SAB 5012 would be after occupancy. So in short, withdrawing an application from the current workload list and subsequently applying for the program as a new application with a new received date would mean that the school district does not meet the occupancy requirement for new construction funding and would therefore not be able to participate. So just as a regulatory reference, section 1859.70A, this specifies that the board shall only provide new construction funding if the approved application was received by the OPSC prior to the date of occupancy for classrooms included in the construction contract. So although this is not included in this particular set of proposed regulations today, OPSC realizes that we need to include this clarification in the next set of proposed regulations intended for the board item to be presented. And so specifically, we're looking at amending section .156 to clarify this process as it relates to the existing occupancy requirement. So ultimately, I think this ensures that bond authority is not reserved for a project that is unable to move forward with a conversion to a final small school district program apportionment through the application vehicle of a 5004. So with that being said, we can go ahead and dive into the proposed regulations today on attachment A8B, beginning with stamped page number 10. Okay, so here we are looking at two additions to the definitions section of regulations. So first, we have a proposed amendment to the defined term general location to include a reference to the new section .157.1, which is the preliminary apportionment grant determination for new construction applications, particular to the program. So this amendment is to ensure a reference point is there for purposes of determining site acquisition costs as it relates to the preliminary apportionment of the program. In conjunction with this, you can also see here, median cost has been, it has a proposed amendment to its definition as well to include some statutory references. So the reference is really specific to the statute for the new program, wherein preliminary applications shall be accepted and apportionments made for new construction and modernization grants in a manner substantially identical to the preliminary requirements as established in Education Code section 17078.24, which is the statutory authority for the currently inactive critically overcrowded schools program. And so this is also, really to just ensure clarity within the proposed regulatory text of the grant determination regulatory section for new construction purposes. And we'll see that way more in depth shortly as we kind of move through the proposed regulations sequentially. Okay, so next on stamped page number 11, we'll go ahead and take a look at section .18.1. This change establishes the timeframes for submittal of the 5-year school facilities master plan as required by Proposition 2 for applications received on or after October 31st, 2024. So just yesterday on January 28th, the board considered and subsequently approved the proposed regulations related to the master plan, and as a result, proposed section 1859.18.1 may be seen here, which specifies that a local governing board resolution is required at the time of application submittal for a preliminary apportionment, and a master plan is required by the time the request for converting the preliminary apportionment to a final apportionment by the vehicle of a Form SAB 5004 is submitted to OPSC. Okay, and so moving forward to stamped page 12, we're going to look at .74.1. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this section has a newly proposed amendment toward the bottom of this page here, where we included the Form SAB 5012. This requires applicants requesting site acquisition funding authorized by Section .74 to certify to these specified criteria. This aligns with language previously presented on the Form SAB 5012 as well. So clarifying updates here. And then we're going to go to stamped page number 18 next. And we're going to look at dot 106, specifically subsection E. And our next update is really just to provide clarity and align better with the preceding subsections A, B, and C. So, you know, before we get into any amendments to the new small school district program regulatory section, I just kind of want to take a pause here to make sure there weren't any questions or thoughts that came in beforehand.
Not seeing anything at the moment.
Okay, great. I'll keep going. There'll be more opportunities. All right, so looking at the more substantial proposed amendments to the small school district program regulations specifically, we're going to take a look at section .157.1 on stamped page 21, wherein we touched on those definitions earlier that are directly interconnected in such a way with these ones. So this particular section, you'll notice, has been updated to state-specific supplemental grants under the new construction program and link them directly to their regulatory references. That way, they're just clear connections to the supplemental grants. And then of note here, we have subsection A6A, which specifies criteria for requesting site acquisition at the preliminary program apportionment stage. As we mentioned earlier, the statute for this program indicates that the program shall be substantially identical to the regulations created for the inactive critically overcrowded schools program. And we recognize that this aspect of our program really just needed clarity and fleshing out, in addition for purposes of site acquisition at the preliminary stage. And so the inclusion of this section, specifically A6A, is to really align with the statutory intent of the education code sections that are applicable. And so, yeah, as I had mentioned earlier, we had amended the definitions of median cost, general location, which are referenced here within this section as determining factors of amounts. And then on the next page, we can see section A7. This particular section is just expanded to include specificity for purposes of developing site development costs at the preliminary stage as well. Again, these proposed amendments are really just to provide clarity and alignment with statutory intent. Okay, and then we can go to stamped page number 23, please, and we'll take a look at the modernization grant determination section. So amendments to this particular section are to specify regulatory references and requirements for clarity, as we had just done in the new construction component. So in the same vein, subsection A7 on stamped page 24 is updated to specify that for purposes of site development for 50 years or older permanent buildings, districts may request 20% of the funding authorized by section .78.6. And so at the time of conversion, the district can amend its request pursuant to section .78.7, wherein the funding provided shall be equal to the lesser of 60% of the cost or 20% of the funding authorized by .78.6. So the lesser of the either. Again, this language is just really added to make sure it's crystal clear to everyone what they can request at the preliminary stage for the respective new construction and modernization programs. Okay, and then on stamped page number 25 for the fund release section of the program, proposed amendments here really just provide additional clarifying language for purposes of requesting site acquisition pursuant to section .75.1. Okay. And then next up, oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. One thing we wanted to add, I think I just wanted to reiterate that you don't need to be financial hardship in order to get advanced site funding under new construction, which is a difference from the SFP. Somebody sent me a note, and I thought I'd mention that. Just that might interest some people out there. So
Thank you. That's a really good point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to stamped page 26 of the item and take a look at .157.4, specifically subsection C. So within the conversion section, we have added a proposed amendment to clarify qualifying enrollment criteria for purposes of converting a preliminary program apportionment to a final program apportionment. So specifically, any applicant with a qualifying enrollment of 2,500 students or fewer at the time that the applicant received a preliminary program apportionment may convert to a final program apportionment, even in the event the applicant's current enrollment exceeds 2,501 students at the time that the applicant submits that 5004 to convert. So due to this, subsection D is also added to clarify how qualifying enrollment in subsection C, which we just spoke to, how that impacts the supplemental grants, specifically for purposes of the modernization supplemental grants for minimum essential facility and transitional kindergarten classroom, wherein the funding is calculated using the enrollment demonstrated within the preliminary program apportionment. Okay, and then next on stamped page 28, within the final grant determination section, so 157.7, we have updated this particular section to really just simplify it, as well as delete any duplicative information from the time of our last presentation. So that being said, that is the last of the proposed amendments to the regulations as from the last presentation. And so I'll go ahead and pause once again just to check and see if there's any questions or thoughts that anyone has.
yeah, we can give it a minute to breathe here. I don't see anything in the chat, but if there's anyone that has a question, they'd like to raise your hand and ask it, or that would be a good time to throw something in the chat too if you have something you want us to address, or if you have a question about anything. I'm gonna call on Rebecca. Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you so much for the presentation, and we appreciate all the detail. The one thing that I just wanted to mention is that the occupancy provision, we're looking at that in more detail. We want to make sure that it doesn't inhibit access to the program for anyone. So just wanted to let you know that we're going to be examining that a little bit more.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the heads up. All right, seeing no other hands at the moment.
All right, sounds good. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the proposed Form SAB 5012 now on stamped page 36. We can start there. So on this particular form, section 1, hopefully you can see the tiny text there. It's been updated to clarify the type of application of which an applicant can request, being either a preliminary program apportionment for new construction or a preliminary program apportionment for modernization. So really just aim to simplify and have a very easy application selection process for applicants there. Section 5 on the same page, as well as reflected within the instructions, we've updated this particular section on the form to align with updates to the proposed regulation section for the preliminary new construction grant determination regulatory section that we have mentioned earlier today, specifically related to site acquisition and site development costs at the preliminary stage. So you can see that both under section 5E and section 5F, which I believe is on the next page. Yeah, there we go. So additional checkboxes there that hopefully streamline it, make it a little bit easier and align with those regulatory amendments. So that really concludes the changes to the 5012 since the last presentation. And we can go to stamped page number 41 next, related to the Fund Release Authorization 5005 form. Let's see. So this particular form is, proposed to be amended to include a new part, part 3 specifically. You can see in the upper right-hand corner there the additional instructions that we've created for it. But for purposes of requesting a preliminary program apportionment for design only or site acquisition, pursuant to those proposed updates to .157.3. With this amendment, it shifted the other parts of the form forward and just renumbered them. So if you take a look at stamped page number 42, you can also see the new checkboxes for either design only or separate site apportionment. So having gone over the forms, I'll go ahead and take another pause there and see if there's any specific commentary or thoughts that you might have on those.
Oh, don't think so.
All right. So last but not least, I'll go ahead and move on to the grant agreement for Proposition 2, in which it is located on stamped page number 47. So we have some additions to this particular grant agreement to include some definitions. There's a couple different definitions on page 49, I believe, specifically for the Form SAB 5012 and the preliminary small school district program apportionment and project and construction management grant. These, of course, align with the proposed definitions within the regulations. Okay, and then another component that we updated within this grant agreement for Proposition 2 is on stamped page 51. Okay, so Section C has been updated to just cite program authority there under the project execution section. Okay, and then on stamped page 58, we have added a preliminary small school district program apportionment section where the grantee agrees to comply with the requirements of .157.4 and .157.7. So a couple paragraphs there. And then on stamped page number 68, this particular section is updated to include the small school district program, new construction separate apportionment for design costs or adjusted grant. If you scroll to page 69 below, you can also see an additional allowable expenditure specific to the program. Okay, and then in the same vein, section 2 on stamped page 70 is updated to include the small school district program, separate apportionment for site acquisition costs. And then skipping to 79, we have section 4, in likeness, has been updated to include the program for modernization separate apportionment for design costs. And then finally, sections 1, 3, 4, and 5 under the common eligible project expenditures, which is section G, are updated to clarify eligible expenditures related to the project and construction management grant. And page 80 has an example of of what that looks like. And then under the ineligible project expenditures, sections 3 and 5 have been updated to clarify ineligible expenditures related to that grant. And we can see an example of this on page 126. Perfect. All right. Well, with that being said, we have gone through everything today that I have to present. I really want to thank everyone for their time, and I'll send it back to Brian to open the floor for any questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions to read out. We've already answered them, but I will read them just for anybody who can't find them. There was a question that says, to clarify, the 2,500 enrollment requirement is based on when the initial application is submitted. Is that correct? And the answer is yes. It's determined at the preliminary apportionment phase when the 5012 is submitted. And then a second question, does the 5012 include a section to request the minimum essential facility augmentation for a mod project, also the transitional kindergarten augmentation? These are the supplemental grants that we're talking about. And then the answer is yes. Section 6 of the 5012 includes those both. Specifically, it's 6G and 6H. So thank you, Tracy and Josh, for answering those.
Brian, maybe you want to bring up
Yeah.
the 5012 and we can go through those supplementals, just kind of
Sure.
all the new stuff that's reserved. Because our intent really is to reserve everything everybody else is eligible for at the very beginning of the preliminary apportionment. So we have modified the form for that purpose. Page 36.
Thank you.
Go back one up page to 2D has the 75-year-old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we looked at that earlier.
And so that's there, and then back to box 6, yeah.
Down here is the supplementals.
We have energy efficiency, the MEF grant, the TK supplemental grant. So we've included all those as well.
Yeah, we want to make sure we're reserving the maximum amount that the project would need, just so that we're protecting that amount. Let's see. One more question. Please confirm that upfront design funds are available to all districts for new construction and only financial hardship districts for modernization.
At the preliminary apportionment stage, everybody's getting the full entire total project cost you're eligible for at that time based on the 5012 and all the supplementals you ask for, including an escalation factor similar to a charter for the next 4 years, so that when you convert at your 5004 stage and the full adjusted grant, all that bond authority is still available for your project. So you won't be missing anything when we true it up. The advanced part is only available to financial hardship for the design, the project management, and assistance grant, with the exception of site acquisition. Site acquisition, we know small school districts to front fund the site acquisition, you do not have to be financial hardship for the advanced release of site acquisition. So we treat that much like the charter program too, based on estimates.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry if my statement confused anybody. Didn't mean for that.
And then maybe, Brian, go back to the occupancy. If Rebecca, Callan, if you're still there, I want to go back to the occupancy requirement, kind of explain that a little bit as we looked at that one in our tent. You know, right now under the new construction program, the core program, how it works is once you've occupied a facility, those students are considered housed. So you cannot come into the state to apply for new construction for that application. So we kind of looked at a small school district program in the same way. If you're already on our workload list and you had a plan, but now you have since occupied it, you're just waiting for bond authority at that particular time. And on the workload list, everyone that's new construction is currently within bond authority. So you won't, it's just a matter of time of when you'll get funded, but it's entirely a locally funded project. We see that not really beneficial at all to the small school district program. And, we're carving out bond authority so that you can plan your project, move forward, and eventually convert it and have that bond authority with you. So you wouldn't be able to do a conversion if you jump lines and move over to a small school district program to get your carve out. You wouldn't be able to meet the eventual conversion requirement when you submit your 5004 that's already in the regulations under .70. So we kind of see there not being a reason to give out a preliminary apportionment for those projects that are already occupied. So kind of same thought pattern as the program already exists for small school district program. So we would suggest people that are occupied stay in line on the workload list, and you're just waiting for us to get to your application to process it.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Matt Peddler has a question.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, thanks for that explanation on the occupancy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What if, since this program is not going to open up for roughly a year, what if new construction money runs out and projects occupy, let's say, in the fall, and they end up BBA? Would those projects be able to submit to the small school district program?
Currently, no. Once you occupy, you would not be able to submit a 5012. That's kind of how we have it positioned in the regs right now. I don't think we're even close though from a new construction to reaching that by the end of this year from an accuracy standpoint.
I hope so too, but you never know. Anyway, maybe it's just something you can think about.
We'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
New question: when the application round opens, if a district has CDE and DSA approval and is not occupied, can they request a conversion on the same application? It's a two-step process. So you would do the 5012 first, and then you would send in your conversion 5004 after that. Yeah, I'll leave it open for a few more minutes in case there's any more questions. These are all great questions, though. Thank you very much, and we'll definitely be taking a look at that occupancy issue. As usual, we'll have for the next 2 weeks, we'll accept feedback. We'll accept feedback, if you have it, regardless. But hopefully, in the next 2 weeks, would be ideal, just so that we can make sure and include any of your comments or thoughts in whatever subsequent item we have, whether it's another stakeholder meeting or if we're going to the state allocation board. We appreciate it's a week this time. Casey's reminding me it's 1 week. Yeah, we're trying to keep these moving. So please, if you do have some comments, send them to us as quickly as you can. Like I said, we want to make sure that we're getting them all in there and considering them and making sure that they're all part of what we're ultimately going to be proposing. So I'm seeing no other questions, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for everyone's participation today. Once again, Happy New Year. Good to see everyone, and we'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.